we're hearing it all the time, that there's going to be violence here in America, that people are targeting. Basically, everyone is going to blame this on the right. Any kind of violence, they're setting up any violence on those who are from the right or, from the Tea Party movement. Are you concerned about this and what is happening in Washington, where Nancy Pelosi comes out and says, she starts to cry and says that she's seen it before and we're going to see it again?
I think there will be violence. I hope we don't have to go through a very violent period of time, but that's what happens too often. When the government runs out of money and runs out of wealth, the people argue over, a shrinking pie. And, of course, the people who have to produce are sick and tired of producing.
But I think what they're saying is that there would be violence would come first.
I think it'll come after a dollar crisis. I think you're always going to have some violence, but, I lived through the 60s, and I was in the military during that time, and I know the 60s were very rough, and there was a lot of violence there. I don't think next month we're going to have anything like the violence we had in the 60s, but potentially, if we do have a dollar crisis and the whole system comes unglued, then I think there's going to be a lot more violence, especially in the inner cities. I
know I've asked you this before, and I'm really bad at time as well, and it's an unfair question because it, if you hit a date and then it doesn't happen, then everybody's like, he was saying. But do you have any concept sooner rather than later on dollar crash?
No, and I do try to avoid picking dates. Austrian economists don't like to pick dates. They pick trends, and they know what the consequences will be. But so often
what is
the date is an emotional or some event, like you mentioned the event of bombing Iran. I don't know when they'll do it. I suspect they will. But if I knew next week they were going to do it, I would say that would be the big event. But
well, I've talked to several people, that I would say would be in the know, and they said the outside date would be March, sometime before now in March. March, it's a done deal. Everything's hardened and everything's done, and the Earth is risen by then. So it's sometime between now and March that people think that.
I wouldn't be that precise, but I would say there's no foundation, and that within the next several years something will happen, which means it could happen in a month or it could happen in 3 or 4 years, but it's going to happen. You just can't do what we're doing. If that were the case, Americans would never have to work again. All we would do, like we have been doing, we've been working less, our good jobs going overseas, we print money, we're able to buy from overseas. But if we could do that forever, none of us would have to have jobs. We could just depend on borrowing from foreigners and printing money. But eventually the world will give up on it. Right now it's in the interest of so many people to keep this dollar going that we haven't had to suffer the consequences yet.
You're a doctor. How do you feel about the steps that we're taking on the swine flu?
I think it's terrible. I don't think this swine flu is necessarily all that dangerous, but I do recognize some flu is. But the last thing I want is central economic planning dealing with personal medical matters. So this idea that everybody might have to take a flu shot, I think, is atrocious. It violates the principles of liberty, and it's not good medicine.
I find it interesting that the same people that tell us that we will never stand between you and your doctor are now telling us that if your doctor says, no, you don't take the swine flu, you have to take it anyway.
Oh, I know. It's collectivism at its worst, and it's a very personal matter. That's why I start with the basic principle that medical care is not a right and the federal government shouldn't be involved, and we should work in that direction rather than saying that everybody deserves medical care and the government is going to be the director and the distributor of medical care. So those are the two opposites, and I think we continuously go in the wrong directions, and we've been doing that ever since the 1960s.
Have you been following the bacteria itself, to be able, the virus itself, to be able to see that it is, I'm told that it is devolving, that it is actually not becoming more virulent, it's becoming less virulent, yet that's not the impression you get from anybody.
No, it's scare tactic. It's to try to frighten everybody into doing things, whether it's foreign policy or domestic policy, economic policy. They want to scare everybody into accepting the role of government as being the caretaker and to take care of us. In 1976, we had a similar thing happen. Two of us, another doctor and myself, voted against the bill to inoculate everybody. Mm-hmm. It turned out that they gave shots to millions of people, and a lot more people died from the shot than from the flu, because the flu turned out to be a fizzle and wasn't much of a thing. But for political reasons, I think it was Ford at the time wanted to grandstand and say, "Oh, we got to take care of the people. Everybody should be inoculated," and we appropriated all this money. It wasn't good medicine. It was lousy politics.
Okay. Ron Paul, the name of the book is End the Fed, and it's out and available everywhere. You had you had a big day last Friday on this. What is the next event that people should be watching for on the Fed?
Boy, you caught me off guard right now. I was just up in Minneapolis. We've been to Philadelphia, and I've been around, but I don't have one within the next week or so.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, thanks for having me on.
You bet. Don't agree with everything on with Ron Paul, but on the Fed, he is absolutely dead to rights. Dead to rights. And in many ways, he's one of the only people that actually sounds like the founding.